So the year was 1999. 1999 was a good year, right? I had just turned 17. I was in matric. I dropped out. I dropped out of matric. I dropped out, I think it was the first or the second semester. I dropped out. And I didn't drop out because schoolwork was hard. It wasn't. I was brilliant, still am. But I dropped out because I had some level of anxiety. I was worried about who's going to pay for my fees, who's going to pay for my university fees. At that age, you already have aspirations of where you want to be, and I could already tell that my mother was going to struggle with this. So I come from a single parent household, because my parents divorced when I was in Standard 1. I think it was called Standard 1 back then. I'm giving away my age. So it was Standard 1 back then. I think it's grade 3 now. And I knew already at that age that I wasn't going to get help from the other party being my dad. And I immediately after my dad and my mom parted ways, I remember vividly, my shoes had holes in it, and I asked my mom to buy me shoes, and my mom didn't have money at that time because we were in between moving houses. And she said, well, ask your dad. And I went to my dad and I showed him my shoes that had holes in it, and I said, Daddy, can you please buy my shoes? And Papa looked at me and said, he basically dismissed me and said, go ask your mother. And I think from that point on, I knew the helping hand that I need is right here. I am the helping hand that I need, because I knew there wasn't any help coming from that quarter. That man belonged to the streets. He was something else. So he basically dismissed me, like, that's not my problem. Go ask your mother to sort that one out. And I went back to my mom, and my mom sat me down and said, listen, this can only happen in a month's time. After we're done the moving and whatnot, I'll be able to get you shoes then. And I think that's where the ultra independence came from. So yeah, back to, I dropped out. So obviously I knew there's no help coming from my dad, zero. And I felt like a little burden, to my mom. And not a burden in a bad way, but a burden in knowing that all the money that she has goes to me and my sister. So I wanted to relieve that. So I had a brilliant plan. Brilliant plan. Light bulb moment. So the plan was to stop studying as soon as possible and start working as quickly as possible. Brilliant plan. How did that work out? So I started doing all kinds of things. I fell in all kinds of things. I started writing part-time. I was a freelance writer for a little while, and I also auditioned for all sorts of things. I don't know if you guys remember. So a few years back, there was this competition. It's called. It was on Selima Tunzi. They were looking for a presenter. It was a presenter search all over the country, and this small town girl entered. And I went up to top 3 or top 5, I remember, because the whole town was abuzz about it, It was such a big deal, Everybody was going hoo-ha, hoo-ha, Small town girl on TV, small town girl on radio. It all looked like glitz and glamour from the outside. It was so beautifully packaged. But I then realized 6 years after dropping out, I see my friends, I see people that I went to school with. Most of them are starting to graduate. Most of them are making traction in their professional lives. And there I was, still chasing dreams, And when these opportunities, all these glitz and glamour opportunities started phasing out, I found myself knocking at retail shops, knocking at every door that would open, and I would look for jobs. And I remember I went to this other place that fries chicken. And they basically told me, you're not good enough to fry our chicken. And I went to another retail shop, and they also told me, well, you're not good enough to pack our bags. And in retrospect, I'm almost kind of glad that those opportunities were closed to me, because I had unfinished business, I had, and probably one of the reasons why those opportunities were closed to me is because I didn't even have the minimum requirement to even be knocking on any door. And yet I still had this vindi, this audacity to keep knocking. So in the middle of that turmoil of me going through all of that, I met this lady. I met Mariki Pelser, lovely woman, beautiful, short hair, very waif-like, very thin, the salt of the earth, basically. She was a psychometrist. So I worked for her for a while. I was doing menial jobs for her here and there. And I think it was about 3 or 4 months while I was working for her, and she said to me, Coslin, I've got a bit of a concern. Let's do a psychometric test on you. Let's see where you are in terms of your level of thinking, Let's see what potential you have. And I'm like, yeah, sure, boss, I'm game. And we do the psychometric test. And after the psychometric test, she sits me down, obviously, to give me the results of what potential she sees, what capacity I have. And she says to me, girl, you need to go back to school because you're wasting your life. You're wasting your time. And I said, no, man, I still need to earn money. And I still have my reasons, and I'm making excuses there. And she said, well, if you don't want to go back to school, you're not going to be working for me anymore, because I can see you're wasting your life and you're wasting your time. And promptly I enrolled in an N3 course to complete the metric. And within that very same year, I got a job as a plant operator at a certain mine. And had that woman not walked into my life at that very same point, I don't know where I would have been. I don't know where my story would have ended. I don't know. I just don't know. But 15 years down the line, I am an HRD professional. I'm in people development. And I'm doing my master's. And had that woman not woken up to the fact that that is not all that I could have been, it would have gone over also wrong. And the anomaly about this whole thing is the type of child I was when I dropped out. I was an A+ student. I was the type that on my part-time basis, when I had time, I would read. I was your woo-woo child. Imagine back then in 1999, I was your little Erika Badu with my dukes on. I was heavy into astrology. I was the child that parents measured their own kids against. I was that brilliant. But I'm the one that dropped out because anxiety and because depression does not have a name. It does not have a surname. And I wasn't the model child for depression or whatever, but I had it, and it had me by the balls. And nobody noticed. But I am glad there was this one person, when she woke up to the potential that I had, and I didn't know how much more lost I was. I am glad that she had the guts to say, listen, baby girl, I probably would have found my way out. Audacity, I've got the balls of steel. I would have knocked at some doors somebody else would have opened. But had she not made it easy for me, I don't know.